الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على النبي المبعوث رحمة للعالمين Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Today inshallah we're going to be talking about one of the most controversial topics, even though it shouldn't be. However, it is one of the most tragic events in Islamic history, which is, since of course we are technically in Ashura, it is past Maghrib time. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the maqtal of Al-Hussain alayhi salam. And we can say alayhi salam, even though it's not common. Sunnis don't usually say alayhi salam. However, even if you return to Sahih al-Bukhari, you will find cases in which Fatima is referred to as alayhi salam and Ali is referred to as alayhi salam. And even you find some other early books like Al-Qasim bin Salam's, I think, Fada'il al-Quran. He says Aisha alayhi salam. So it was a practice that did occur. You'll even find inside al-Bukhari, Ibrahim alayhi salam, of course not Ibrahim the Prophet, but Ibrahim the son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Basically, there are many specifics in the maqtal, or in the events of his death, that we differ with the Shi'is about. Of course, the general idea, the general story that Al-Hussain went to Karbala and he was surrounded and he was killed, yes, everyone of course agrees with this. It happened Ashura in the year 61. Everyone, yes, we're all fine with that. However, there are some key important issues that we have a difference of opinion on. Inshallah, we're going to get to that. Now, firstly, the reason why there's ikhtilaf, the reason why we differ with Shi'is, and even Sunnis differ with themselves and Shi'is differ with themselves, is because of the question of where do you take your history? Where do you learn your history from? Now, I'll just toss that question at you guys. Anyone? Where do you guys learn about Maqtal al-Hussain? Has anyone here heard of the story of Maqtal al-Hussain, the martyrdom of Al-Hussain?
Yeah.
Okay, so where did you get this from? Okay, so that's one. So YouTube videos, for example, Yasser Qadhi. Anyone else? Okay, so Da'wah Man is another source. Anyone else? Adnan Ibrahim. Okay, really? I haven't even seen Adnan Ibrahim's one. Okay, so anyways, most of us get our knowledge from speakers, and where do speakers get their knowledge from? Usually books, sometimes other speakers, but yes, usually from sources. Now the issue is with these sources is that you have primary sources, you have secondary sources. The vast majority of anyone who's going to be talking about Maqtal al-Hussain, if he's a Sunni, he's going to be taking it from Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya by Ibn Kathir. That's just how it is. It's just common. This is the common practice. Some from Al-Isaba by Ibn Hajar. He has a different rendition over there. Now, the issue is that there's an issue with the secondary sources. Of course, the secondary sources focus on, usually one primary source. And I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of the primary sources of Maqtal al-Hussain. Really quick, inshallah. We have to get this out of the way, because if we don't get this out of the way, there's going to be a lot of vagueness. There's not going to be enough clarity, inshallah. In any case, the first primary source, the most common primary source, the one that Ibn Kathir quotes, is Maqtal al-Hussain by Abu Mikhnaf, Lut bin Yahya al-Azdi, who passed away in the year 157. Sorry. In any case, Abu Mikhnaf. The issue with Abu Mikhnaf is that he was accused of being a liar. So that's a huge issue. That's what you find in Ibn Kathir. Yahya bin Ma'in was asked about Abu Mikhnaf, and he said, "Oh, he's worse than Amr bin Shimr." And Amr bin Shimr he was accepted as a liar. So that's a huge issue right there. We just started off, and we find out that the most commonly referenced source is someone who's been accused of lying. The second most common source is Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad. Ibn Sa'ad, mashallah, of course, is a major hadith scholar. However, unfortunately, Ibn Sa'ad does not mention specifically where he's getting his narrations from. He mentions a bunch of people, and one of them is Muhammad bin Umar al-Waqidi, who was known to be one of the biggest liars in Medina. So, you know, we assume that Ibn Sa'ad is getting his information from there. Wallahu a'lam. However, even if we say he didn't get it from al-Waqidi, he got it from someone else, we're still stuck because we don't know where he got his information from. So it's either we don't know, or it's Muhammad bin Umar al-Waqidi. So you know, you're not really. Unfortunately, it really is unfortunate. If he just mentioned where he was getting his information from specifically every single time, then we would be in a much better place. Next is Ammar al-Duhani's narration, which can be found in Tarikh al-Tabari. It's cleaner, it's shorter. That's one of the that's one of the more interesting things and nicer things about these shorter renditions of Maqtal al-Hussain is they're usually more authentic. However, unfortunately, there is a weak narrator who is Khalid bin Yazid bin Asad, I believe, and that's why we can't even rely on Ammar al-Duhani's rendition of Maqtal al-Hussain. Abu Ma'shar's narration or rendition can be found in Al-Mahan, Kitab Al-Mahan by Abu Arab al-Tamimi. Abu Ma'shar himself is a weak scholar and he's rejected. So you see, we have this issue. All the main primary sources are weak, believe it or not, or just simply unreliable. However, alhamdulillah, we have enough of these isolated reports in authentic sources that if we bring together, we can come to a clear and authentic picture and rendition of what happened to Al-Hussain. Alhamdulillah. And these sources are plenty. You know, I'm talking about Tarikh Khalif ibn Khayyat, Tarikh al-Tabari as well, Sahih al-Bukhari, Mu'jam al-Tabarani. You have a lot of sources that do mention bits and pieces here and there. Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, you bring them together, you have a clear picture, an authentic picture. So alhamdulillah, that's something that, you know, we have access to. So we don't, and that's the preferred option. It's not to rely on one source that's quoting a liar. Of course, now one question is going to come to mind. Why did Ibn Kathir rely on, you know, Abu Makhnaf? Why rely on a liar? It's a very simple answer. It's, you know, Abu Makhnaf's narration contains a lot of details. It's very clear, a lot of information. It's spread out in a way that's very organized, and that's why you find a lot of historians liking to recite it. However, the first or the earliest source that compiles Abu Makhnaf's narration is At-Tabari, and At-Tabari says, don't accept everything in my book. If there's an issue with the stuff in my book, it's not from me, it's from the narrators. And in this case, it's Abu Makhnaf, Lut bin Yahya. Okay, so now here's one issue I have with Abu Makhnaf's narration. Abu Makhnaf, and I think everyone should have an issue with this. Abu Makhnaf has like a bunch of letters. He had access to secret letters that no one had access to. Okay. However, you know, miraculously Abu Makhnaf has access to these letters. So for example, Yazid bin Muawiyah's letters, his letters to Al-Walid bin Utbah, who is the Emir of Medina, 2 letters of Kufans to Al-Hussain, Al-Hussein's response to the Kufans, Muslim bin Aqil's, who is Al-Hussein's cousin, his letters to Al-Hussain, Al-Hussein's response, Muslim bin Aqil's response, the Kufans' letters to Yazid, Al-Hussein's letters to the Kufans, Muslim bin Aqil's letters to Al-Hussain, Ubaydullah bin Ziyad's letters to Yazid, Yazid's response, Al-Hussein's response to the Kufans, Muslim bin Aqil's response to Al-Hussain, Ubaydullah bin Ziyad's response to or letter to Al-Hurr bin Yazid, Umar bin Sa'ad's letters to Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. I mean, this is a guy who comes like 100 years after Al-Hussain. However, he has all these documents, secret documents, you know, stuff that's been sent through between spies. And alhamdulillah, you know, Abu Makhnaf has all of this. So this itself should be It's too dodgy. It's too dodgy. It should not be accepted. Okay, now here's the crazy thing. Okay, if you thought this was bad enough, okay, which it is, there's something much worse than the rendition of Abu Mikhnaf. What's worse is, about 800 years after Abu Mikhnaf passed away, you have another book that comes out of nowhere called Al-Hussain by Abu Mikhnaf again. Okay, and it's, and again, you know, it's the same book. I mean, the same author, same name. The content is different. Around 800 years. Okay, now if you go to any matem, okay, unfortunately, this late version B is what you will hear. Okay, you will almost never hear this. Okay, and the stuff in here is really, I mean, it's so exaggerated, akhi. It's so exaggerated. That's the issue, and the idea, the beliefs that some Shi'is have formed about Al-Hussain and what happened is based upon this version, and wallah, we have no idea where it came from. Now you see, this was not only relied by, or not only quoted by Sunnis, it was quoted by Shi'is as well. It was quoted by Zaydis as well. So Ithna Ashari Shi'is and Zaydi Shi'is and Sunnis were all quoting this book. Okay? They're all quoting the same, you know, guy who's accused of lying. Okay? However, the issue is this guy. The issue is whoever wrote this, and wallahu a'lam. Now here's the thing, it's not me. It's not just me who's saying this. This view is held by some of the top hadith scholars, the top Shi'i hadith scholars. So for example, Abbas al-Qummi, who's the author of Mafatih al-Jinan, which is perhaps the most popular Shi'i book of dua. He says that this book should not be accepted. That this book is we don't know where it's from, and this one is the authentic book. And Nuri Tabrasi, who is the author of one of the 8 Shi'i books of hadith, he says the same thing. So who are we to blame? I think we're supposed to blame, you know, the people who did not do their research, and they're giving these sermons and they're giving these lectures, preferring this weak and late version above the correct version. And remember, again, the correct version is problematic. But alhamdulillah, I mean, at least it was something that has some substance. This late version, wallahu alam, we don't know where it came from. Now, I just want to mention a couple of things, a couple of comparisons for you to just get an idea of the exaggerations in this thing. So, for example, one of the interesting things is Al-Hussain, of course, him and his family members and the people who were with him, they were from around 70 to 100 people. The army that was sent to fight Al-Hussain, they were 4,000 in number according to this. 4,000. Now, according to this book, they were 80,000 in number. Okay? That's one exaggeration. The second exaggeration is that Al-Hussain, in this book, okay, he kills one person. During the battle, he kills one person. He stabs a person, and then that person is trampled upon, and, you know, he gets killed. In here, Al-Hussain kills 1,500 in this late version. In any case, these exaggerations are simply too problematic. One of the most commonly heard of exaggerations, and this is extremely famous among Shi'is, is the story of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Abu Fadl al-Abbas is the brother of Al-Hussain, Al-Abbas ibn Ali, ibn Abi Talib, and according to the common version that you would hear in any matam you go to, is that Al-Abbas, of course, Al-Hussain is thirsty, he wants some water, so he sends Al-Abbas to get some water. Abbas starts to fetch the water in these pouches. He'd fetch the water, and then when he's coming back, he's faced by some men, and they attack him, and he starts to defend himself. And he was about to drink some water himself to get some strength, but he remembered Al-Hussain. He remembered the thirst of Al-Hussain. So he said, no, I have to go back to Al-Hussain first. So he gets attacked, and he starts defending himself. And he loses his arm during the battle. And with one arm, While fighting, he defeats 180 people. He kills 180 people with one arm. Okay? And then his second arm gets chopped off. And then he puts the sword in his mouth. He puts the sword in his mouth. And he continues to fight. And then he gets killed. Okay? Now, it sounds... here's the thing, man. People believe this. Okay? It's because you hear this since you're a kid. You hear this constantly, again and again. You believe this. You believe this is true. Now, the issue is, in the original version, Al-Abbas goes to get some water. He's with some men. He's not by himself. He's with some men. Nafi' bin Hilal, who's with Al-Abbas, gets into a little struggle with some other guy from the opposing army. He stabs him. That guy's taken away. That guy passes away. So one guy passes away. And then Nafi' bin Hilal and Al-Abbas, they successfully bring the water back to Al-Hussain. Al-Abbas doesn't kill 180 people. He doesn't get both arms chopped off. He does, of course, pass away. He does get killed later on. But there's like these dramatic events, these emotional events never happen. Now, the story of someone losing two arms, that's Ja'far al-Tayyar. That's Ja'far bin Abi Talib. That's what happens in Ma'arakat Mu'tah, in the Battle of Mu'tah. That's what happens. It doesn't happen here. However, people, they find stories, they find things in Islamic history that they like. So, of course, they attribute it to copy-paste. I like that. They copy and pasted it into the story of the martyrdom of Al-Hussain. Allah al-Musta'an. Okay, so I just had to get that stuff out of the way, so that now, inshallah, we can get to the actual events of Maqtal al-Hussain, inshallah. Okay. So firstly, I'd like to start off with again, some background. Some background is always necessary. We start off in the year 41. Al-Hasan bin Ali came to Muawiyah, or he opposed Muawiyah with an army that was like a mountain. And Amr bin al-As said, I only see this mountain collapsing when we bring our mountain, or when the mountain faces it that's of similar size. So Muawiyah says, if that were to happen, who will take care of their women? Who will take care of their property? Who will take care of whatever they leave behind? And that's when he decided that there needs to be some peace. So he sends two men from Bani Abd Shams, his tribe members, to Al-Hasan. And they speak to Al-Hasan, and they say to Al-Hasan, we'll give you whatever you want, just let go of this khilafah. And Al-Hasan, says, who is going to guarantee this? They say, we will guarantee it for you, just do it. And Al-Hasan did. And that's when Abu Bakr, not Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr narrates, the Sahabi, he says that, I heard Rasulullah ﷺ say, this son of mine is a Sayyid, and he will bring peace to two great groups of Muslims. And this is a prophecy coming into reality and occurring. And it was in that year that Al-Hasan al-Hussain left the political domain, and they started to live normal lives in Medina. They returned to Medina, and that was a new beginning for them. Because of course they were in Kufa at the time. Ali, of course, had transferred everything to Kufa, and they were with Ali in Kufa. So when they were in Medina, they had a very strange relationship with the government. You see, they had a good relationship with Muawiyah. They had to have a good relationship with Muawiyah because Muawiyah, of course, guaranteed it for them. However, they had a bad relationship with whoever was ruling Medina at the time, or at least some of them. So, for example, now here's something that I have to, I want you guys to focus on. I will mention a source to everything I say, and if I mention something without mentioning a source, please, notify me or do ask me for my source. And inshallah, that's what's going to be different between me and whoever is quoting Abu Makhnaf or whoever is quoting Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya. And this is how Islamic history should be. When you hear Islamic history, the person that's telling you of these events should be giving you a source. And there's no aib in this. And there's no ihraj. A person should not be embarrassed when he's asked for a source. Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, Al-Hassan approaches Muawiyah and he's asked, and Muawiyah says to him, I will give you, Ya Hassan, something that I've never given anyone. I'll give you a gift that no one has ever received. And he gives him 400,000 dirhams, which is equivalent of 2.5 million riyals, $600,000, around that much. Al-Hassan accepts. In the Sharia by Al-Ajuri, same thing. Al-Hassan al-Hussain, they go up to Muawiyah and he gives them gifts and they accept his gifts. Which shows, of course, that there was some good relations between them. However, back in Medina, Imam Ahmed narrates in the Kitab al-Ilal wa Ma'arifat al-Rijal that there was an issue between Marwan bin Hakam and Al-Hassan and Al-Hussain. Now, if you rewind a bit, you will recall that Marwan bin Hakam was on the side of Aisha, Talha and Zubair during the Battle of Al-Jamal. So he still has these grudges. And what he used to do is every single Friday, he used to curse Ali bin Abi Talib while he was on the minbar. Of course, this infuriated Al-Hassan and Al-Hussain. No one's going to listen to this. No one's going to listen to his father being cursed on the minbar every week. However, of course, this didn't go on throughout the throughout the Khilafah of Muawiyah. At times, Muawiyah would have Sa'id bin As as the Emir, and Sa'id bin As was someone that would not curse Ali. However, whenever Marwan was there, he would curse Ali. Now, in Musnad Abi Ya'la, there is this interesting incident where it got so bad that Marwan was cursing Al-Hassan al-Hussain specifically, and Al-Hassan was holding back Al-Hussain, and Marwan said something that really infuriated Al-Hassan. He said, "You are an Ahl Bayt that is accursed." Subhanallah. Al-Hassan said to him, "We are accursed by Allah. Allah has cursed you upon the tongue of His Prophet while you were within your father's loins." And this is something that is authentic. There is even a narration of Aisha in which something similar is mentioned. Now, carrying on, this is something very interesting. In Tabaqat by Ibn Sa'ad himself, he quotes Al-Baqir, who is, of course, the grandson of Al-Hussain. Okay, again, everything I say is authentic. You can look it up, inshallah. I mentioned the sources, I mentioned the incident. You can come back to me for specific references, page numbers, screenshots, whatever, inshallah, in the future. Ibn Sa'ad goes to, Ibn Sa'ad mentions that Al-Baqir, okay, the grandson of Al-Hussain, says that Al-Hassan al-Hussain used to pray behind Marwan bin Hakam. Okay, they used to pray behind him. Okay, even though he used to curse their father. However, they used to curse him. Okay, they used to curse him. However, during prayer, they'd pray behind him. And that's just how it was. He prays the Jum'ah, he's the Khatib, he's giving khutbah. They, even there's this narration in Ibn Abi Shaybah, Sahih Ibn Abi Shaybah, Al-Hassan used to not even listen to the khutbah. However, during prayer, he'd pray behind Marwan bin Hakam. Carrying on. Now, okay, Ibn Abi Shaybah narrates that in the year, Ibn Abi Shaybah narrates that from the path of Umair bin Ishaq, that Al-Hassan, okay, this is of course a few years later, this is in the year 49 after Hijrah, Al-Hassan becomes sick, and Al-Hassan says that a man comes to him, he visits him to see what's wrong with Al-Hassan. Al-Hassan says, he goes behind this partition, he comes back and he has a cane, and he says, I just vomited chunks of my liver. I've been poisoned several times, and now it was just the worst time. And I took this cane, and I started to just push it towards the side, push like chunks of my liver towards the side. Okay. Now here's something, of course, to keep in mind. Medically speaking, Okay, medically speaking, there's a big question mark on that because it's not really. I don't believe it's possible to vomit chunks of your liver. Yeah, you know. So what's understood by scholars like Sheikh Al-Ghayth, he has this fascinating book about the history of the Caliphate of Muawiyah. He says that he's actually spoken to physicians, and they said that a description of these chunks of blood, hardened chunks of blood, are descriptions of someone with a stomach tumor. It's not, it's not your liver. It's a stomach tumor, basically. So, wallahu alam, there's a question mark as to whether Al-Hasan was poisoned or not. Wallahu alam. It is commonly believed that he was, but we can't really say for sure. There's this other narration in Musannaf Abi Shaybah. Actually, excuse me, it's the same one from Umair bin Ishaq. Al-Hussain comes up to Al-Hasan and he says to him, "Who did this to you?" And Al-Hasan says, what are you going to do? Are you going to kill him? And he says, "Yeah, of course." And he says, "If it was who I think it is, then Allah will get a greater vengeance than you will. And if it's not, then, I don't want someone who's innocent to be harmed." And of course this shows that Al-Hasan had no idea who poisoned him. If he was poisoned, Al-Hasan had no idea. So, who are we, 1,400 years later, how are we going to know if Al-Hasan was poisoned or who poisoned Al-Hasan? Wallahu alam. Carrying on.
So at this stage, Hassan has far off given away the requirement of the Caliphate.
Yeah, Al-Hasan, that's it.
He's just living a life in Medina.
Yeah, as the brother was saying, Al-Hasan is just living in Medina. He's given up, the Khilafah, and that's basically it. Now, there are some narrations that say that Al-Hasan said that if Muawiyah passes, I want it back. Okay? Wallahu alam. I'm not sure if it's authentic, but there are some things like that. So, wallahu alam. Now, in the year 51, so 2 years after Al-Hasan passes away, Muawiyah wants to take the Pledge of Allegiance for Yazid. Abu Nu'aym in Al-Hilya mentions this very interesting narration where he hears this rumor, Muawiyah hears a rumor of Abdullah bin Zubayr, Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr, and Abdullah bin Umar all fleeing to Mecca because they're trying to get away from this Pledge of Allegiance for Yazid. So Muawiyah himself heads to Mecca, tries to find what's going on. He talks to them, one by one, and he comes to this realization that Ibn Zubayr is up to something. And he tells him, you're a sly fox. I know what you're trying to do. And Ibn Zubayr says to him, "Listen, Muawiyah, if you are bored with Khilafah, then fine. Give bay'ah to Yazid and we'll follow Yazid because, we can't have two Khalifas at the same time." And basically, Muawiyah, realizes there's nothing really going on. These people did not flee to Mecca. No one's trying to get away. However, it's just gossip. And people were talking. And then he said, and alhamdulillah, people are upon this general agreement. This general agreement to not cause disunity. Ibn Umar also mentions in Sahih Bukhari something very similar. Muawiyah says in this narration, he says, "Who is more rightful to this Khilafah than me?" Okay? Who and his father, it's an Arabic expression, who and his father is more rightful to the Khilafah than me? Muawiyah says this. And Ibn Umar says, I wanted to say something, but I'd rather, keep things peaceful the way things were. So which generally shows that it was a time of peace, it was a time of agreement, and this lengthy time, the time of Khilaf Muawiyah, from the year 41 to the year 60, there aren't these civil wars that we've heard of from the time of the last years of Uthman, throughout the times of Ali, through post Muawiyah. The time of Muawiyah, subhanAllah, was a time of general peace amongst the Muslims. Alhamdulillah. Now, in the year 57, Muawiyah appointed Al-Walid bin Utbah bin Abi Sufyan as the Amir of Medina. Not to be confused with Al-Walid bin Uqbah. Alright? Now Al-Walid bin Utbah had some issues with Al-Hussain. This is something that's going to be important. It's going to come up inshallah soon. Al-Walid bin Utbah bin Rabi'a, Al-Walid bin Utbah bin Abi Sufyan, not Al-Walid bin Uqba bin Rabi'a, had an issue with Al-Hussain, a property dispute over a piece of land in the Marwa. And basically, Al-Walid acted unjustly because, of course, he was a representative of Al-Madinah and he can do whatever he wanted. And Al-Hussain, of course, was infuriated by this. And he told Al-Walid, okay, by Allah, if you do not give me my right, then I will take my sword, I will go into the masjid of Rasulullah ﷺ, and I will call upon Hilf al-Fudul. Now what is Hilf al-Fudul? During the time of Jahiliyyah, you had major tribes, or the Qurashi tribes, some of them, not all of them. You had Bani Taym, Bani Asad, Bani Zuhra, and Bani Hashim, of course. They came together and they said that we will stick by anyone who's treated unjustly, and we will, of course, get their right no matter what. And this is what Al-Hussain threatened the Emir of Al-Madinah with. And as soon as Abdullah bin Zubayr heard this, who was from Bani Asad, he said, by Allah, I will do the same. And soon word came to Al-Miswar bin Makhrama, who was from Bani Zuhra, and he said, by Allah, I will do the same. And soon after that, word came to the nephew of Talha bin Ubaidillah, who was from Bani Taym, of course, and he said, by Allah, I will do the same. And Al-Walid bin Utbah had no choice but to give Al-Hussain what is his. So, of course, two lessons we get from this is the first one, and the most obvious one, is Al-Hussain will not back down if his rights are taken from him. If he is treated unjustly, he will take what is his. Al-Hussain was someone of bravery, a man of power, a man of dignity, and was respected and loved by the community. And he would take what was his, and he had the tribes, the sub-tribes of Quraysh with him. And the second lesson is, it's very interesting to see that you have Bani Taym sticking with Al-Hussain. Now Bani Taym is, of course, the tribe of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and Al-Hussain, of course, is a Hashimi. Shows that Bani Taym and Bani Hashim were good with one another, they're in good terms. Of course, this is unlike what, some people try to suggest today that Bani Hashim and Bani Taym and Bani Uday Bani Adi were always enemies. It's not the case. And of course, as we all know, they intermarried with one another, but that's like another topic for another time. In any case, that was Hilf al-Fudul. Hussain threatened Hilf al-Fudul, an alliance that existed in Jahiliyyah. He threatened to bring that back. So Al-Walid had no choice but to give Al-Hussain his rights. Now in the year 60, remember this is around 11 years after the death of Al-Hasan, Muawiyah passes away. And when he passes away, in the end of Rajab, around the 22nd of Rajab, this is in Tarikh Khalifa bin Khayyat, again, Sahih narration. Word arrives to people in Medina. The Emir, who was Al-Walid bin Utbah, who just had this property dispute with Al-Hussain, who was threatened by Al-Hussain. And word arrives Marwan bil Hakam. And Marwan bil Hakam is the person who was just cursing Al-Hussain a few years ago, and he's being cursed by Al-Hussain while he's on the minbar, and Al-Hasan told him, you were cursed when you were in your father's loins. I mean, there was, they have a lot of bad history. Marwan bil Hakam tells Al-Walid bin Utbah, who's the Emir, he tells Al-Walid, as soon as Al-Hussain, he says to Al-Walid, you call Abdullah bin Zubayr and you call Al-Hussain, have them come over here, and when they come, tell them give bay'ah to Yazid, or kill them. So Abdullah bin Zubayr is, he's summoned, he comes in, he approaches, and he's told Muawiyah passes away. Rahimahullah. He of course, these are Bani Umayyah, so he pays his condolences to them. And Al-Walid gets down to business. He says, Yazid was given the Pledge of Allegiance by the people of Sham. It's your turn to give the Pledge of Allegiance. And Abdullah bin Zubair says, okay, I don't mind, but not here. I'm not someone who gives, Pledge of Allegiance behind closed doors. I have to go publicly, and I'm going to give the Pledge of Allegiance, no problem. And Marwan bin Hakam feels there's something wrong that's going on, so he says, kill him, ya Walid. And that's when Ibn Zubair starts to curse Marwan, and Marwan starts to curse Abdullah bin Zubair, and they keep on cursing until Walid just kicks them both out of the room. Al-Hussain comes in not too long after, and he's summoned, and Al-Hussain just, nothing happens with Al-Hussain. There's just this quarrel that just happened. So, basically Al-Hussain leaves. Marwan goes up to Al-Walid bin Utbah, and he tells him, you're going to see Ibn Zubair in the place that you don't like soon. Al-Walid sends some spies. He sends some spies to follow Abdullah bin Zubair. Abdullah bin Zubair goes to his son Hamza. He says to Hamza, go to Al-Hulayfa and get my ride ready, because I need to leave. Abdullah bin Zubair goes back home, he makes wudu, he starts praying and praying and praying until the spies go. They get tired, they get bored, they leave. He gets on his mount, he goes to Al-Hulayfa, he gets on his ride, he travels all the way to Mecca. He gets to Mecca. When in Mecca, he meets up with Al-Hussain. He says, Ya Hussain, what are you doing here? If I had the support that you have in Al-Kufa, I'd be in Al-Kufa. I wouldn't be here in Mecca. You don't have anyone, to help you out here. Yeah, of course, Al-Hussain has popularity everywhere, but he doesn't have the popularity that he has in Kufa. He spent years in Kufa, and, the people of Kufa, they were known as, the Shia of Ali, or a lot of them were known as the Shia of Ali. Now, the reason why quotations is because it was a political sect at the time. We're not talking about an ideological sect. We're not talking about the 12er Shias. We're not talking about the Zaydiyah Shias. We're talking about a group of people who were politically aligned with Ali bin Abi Talib. And of course, the sons of Ali as well. So, when that happens, Yazid sends a new emir over Al-Madinah, and that emir, while on the pulpit, says he has taken refuge, of course referring to Ibn Zubair, he has taken refuge, and if he enters Mecca, and if he goes into Mecca, by Allah, we will burn Mecca upon him. And I see some people were complete tyrants. I believe it was Amr bin Sa'id bin As. Now, also we can extract some interesting things from this, and we find that some of Bani Umayyah were extremely ruthless. However, others weren't. For example, Abdul Malik bin Marwan. It is said that Abdul Malik bin Marwan was there in the masjid, and he had issues with the emir that was sent and his words, and he said, he said something like, I'm someone who will stand in that man's way. Wallahu a'lam if that narration is or that edition is correct. That's in Tariq Khalifa bin Khayyat as well. Now, a side point, we often hear that all the people that Al-Hussain met told him, Ya Hussain, don't go to Kufa. However, just now, in this authentic narration, in Tariq Khalifa, Ibn Zubair tells Al-Hussain, Hussain, why don't you go to Kufa? It sounds like a good idea. Now, the origin of these reports of the Sahaba that went to, or that told Al-Hussain, don't go to Kufa, this can all be found in the rendition of Muhammad bin Umar al-Waqidi, who is accused of lying, who is known to be one of the biggest liars in the history of Medina. Now, Muhammad bin Umar al-Waqidi says, he has like this list of people that came to Hussein and warned him. They include Ibn Muti', Ibn Umar, Abdullah bin Ayyash, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, Miswar bin Makhrama, Amra bin Abd al-Rahman, Abu Bakr bin Abd al-Rahman bin Harith, Abdullah bin Ja'far bin Abi Talib, Amr bin Sa'id, and Ibn al-Hanafiya, who is of course the brother of Al-Hussain, and Abu Waqid al-Laythi. Okay? Now, we don't find this in the authentic traditions. We only find one person telling Al-Hussain not to go, and we find one person telling Al-Hussain, you should go, which is Ibn Zubayr. Now, what's interesting is, try to think of this rationally. If all these people came to Al-Hussain, all these companions came to Al-Hussain, and they all told Al-Hussain, Hussain, you shouldn't go, maybe Al-Hussain would think twice. Maybe he would take their advice. And that, it's just not rational, in my opinion. And we simply should not be trusting someone who is accused of lying.
He was a source for one of the primary sources you mentioned?
Yes. Muhammad bin Umar al-Waqidi is the source for the second primary source, which is Ibn Sa'd, who is a major credible historian and hadith scholar. Okay. So, now what happened next? Al-Hussain left in Rajab, or towards the very end of Rajab. And he left Mecca either at the very end of Dhul Hijjah, right before Muharram. So he spent like 4 to 5 months in Mecca before leaving. That's something to think about. So it wasn't his immediate plan, I want to go to Kufa directly. But it was something that he thought about, that he considered, and finally came to the decision to make. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was something that he later on felt that was the best idea to do. And right before he left, or sometime before he left, there was one person that told him, Hussein, you shouldn't leave. Who is? Any guesses?
Ibn Umar?
No, Ibn Umar. Nothing's authentic about Ibn Umar.
His wife?
Not his wife. No, Ibn Zubayr was the guy who said that you should leave. Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas says to Al-Hussain, why would you go to Al-Kufa, the people who killed your father, the people who...
expelled the governor, and does he say something about the governor being expelled?
I don't know. In any case, Ibn Abbas says, why would you go to someone who killed your father, who betrayed your brother? If people would not make little of me, if people would not belittle me, I would hold you by your hair and prevent you from going. And Hussein said to Ibn Abbas, I know that the haram will become halal due to one man. I know that this forbidden land will be attacked due to one man being here, and I do not want to be that man. Of course, this suggests that Al-Hussain had some knowledge from Rasulullah ﷺ, that someone being in Mecca will cause Mecca to be attacked. And I do not want to be one man. I'd rather die in a faraway place than to be that one man. And that's when Ibn Abbas decided that it's best to leave Al-Hussain, do what he wants.
What did Ibn Abbas mean by belittling people?
Ibn Abbas said people will belittle me because, imagine Ibn Abbas holding Al-Hussain by his hair. It's not. It's an inappropriate action, but it just goes to show his love for Al-Hussain, how much he cared about Al-Hussain to prevent him from going. But he just did not want this, this negative, belittlement that would of course occur. In any case, carrying on.
So you mentioned that eventually Hussein decided to go.
Yeah.
I've heard alternate stories where he was asked to come through letters that came to him.
Yes, okay. So Al-Tabari mentions, the brother asked, were there letters that were sent to Al-Hussain? Yes, this is this is narrated by everyone, and there's no reason to doubt this. The earliest source that narrates this is Al-Hussain bin Abd al-Rahman, who's reliable. He's not an eyewitness, but he narrates this, and this is generally accepted. It's in Tarikh al-Tabari. He mentions that Al-Hussain had letters sent to him. This is in the year, at the end of the year 60, I'm guessing. In the end of the year 60, he got sent these letters, and Al-Hussain, due to these letters that were sent his cousin Muslim bin Aqil to check out Al-Kufa and to see if everything is fine. He sends a Muslim bin Aqil, and Muslim bin Aqil heads to the house of Han ibn Urwa, and he basically stays in the house of Han ibn Urwa. Now it is said that well, Hani ibn Urwa is of course eventually killed by the Emir of Al-Kufa, who's Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. It's all in Tarikh al-Tabari, by the way.
Authentic.
There's some question marks. But we know he was killed. We know that Hani ibn Urwa was killed. However, the question marks revolve around what exactly was said, and there's really it's a very interesting narration. Ubaydullah says to Hani, I've given you this, I've done for you that, I've been so good to you, you know, and how do you repay me? And Hani says, I repay you by going against you. He says, you go against me? And, you know, he basically has him killed. But there's that narration is not reliable. But we do know for a fact that Hani bin Urwa was killed around this time. Okay, so carrying on, this is of course also in Tarikh al-Tabari through the narration of Hilal bin Yasaf, that Muslim bin Aqil was with his companions, and there were a large number of them, and this is a very famous narration, and they would be going through the streets of Al-Kufa, and every time they would take a turn, you'd have 30 to 40 men just ditching basically Muslim bin Aqil and ditching the cause, even though recently, just not too long ago, they all, you know, swore to be with Al-Hussain and to help Al-Hussain. And this was a very dark night. So they head into Masjid al-Ansar. That's the name of the masjid, Masjid al-Ansar. They head inside the masjid, and Ubaydullah bin Ziyad and his troops, they're trying to track these people down, they're trying to locate them, and they can't really hear much sound. And they say, you know, maybe they're inside the masjid, which, you know, suggests it's a small number of people. So they had the roof ripped open. All right, of course it wasn't made out of you know, cement. It was we can just guess it was some palm tree leaves or something. And they had the roofs ripped open, and they come in with these torches, and they find 50 men. Ubaydullah bin Ziyad himself goes on the pulpit, and he says, split up into fours. Okay, and he's someone with authority, you know. Yeah, he's like, he goes up and you know facing a rebellion, and he tells these people split up, you know, and they actually do split up. And as soon as they split up, you know, he has his men and his goons attack them. So they get attacked. Muslim bin Aqil gets stabbed, and you know, he starts bleeding, and he heads over to a house that was a house of someone from Bani Kinda. So while he's there, he's taking care of his wounds. News spreads that Muslim bin Aqil is in this house, and word gets to Muhammad bin Ash'ath, I believe, who was with Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. A man comes to Ibn Ash'ath and tells him. Ubaydullah says, what's going on? And he says, you know, Muslim bin Aqil is in his house. He's like, okay. He sends 2 men, and they go to Muslim bin Aqil, and they said, the Emir wants you. Khalas, you know, Muslim bin Aqil knows this is it. So he says, guarantee my safety. And they say, you know, we cannot guarantee this for you, we have no word. And Muslim bin Aqil, of course, gets taken to Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. Again, Muslim bin Aqil, the cousin of Al-Hussain, and immediately he is killed. Now,
This whole thing is authentic?
this is authentic. This is in Tarikh al-Tabari. Hilal bin Yasaf. Hilal bin Yasaf, again, who was in Kufa at the time. He says that Al-Hussain leaves, and while he's on the way, he gets, the roads are closed, basically. And Al-Hussain is surprised as to why the roads are closed, and he asks, why are the roads closed? And he meets some Bedouins on the way, and they say, we don't know what's going on. So Al-Hussain, of course, can't get into Kufa, and he moves westward. When he moves westward, he's surrounded by some men, and they tell him that you know, yeah, khalas, this is it for you, you know. This is it for you. The army, it's an army that's sent, and the army is, of course, sent by Umar bin Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas. All right, something important to be aware of. This is the son of Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, who was promised paradise. He's sent, he surrounds Al-Hussain, and Al-Hussain has to plead with him to, of course, be left alone and to be guaranteed safety. Now, the issue is that Al-Hussain is with his family. He's not alone, he's not with, an army, he's with family members, mainly family members. And due to this, Hussein has to not just look out for himself, he has to look out for them as well. So, according to this authentic narration, according to Hilal bin Yasaf, in Tariq al-Tabari, Al-Hussain says, okay, I'll give my allegiance to Yazid. Just how about you guys come, we'll move together. You accompany me to Yazid, and I'll put my hand in his hand, and that will be it. And I said, no. You will be judged by Ibn Ziyad, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, who was, by the way, he was like 26 years old, 28 years old at the time. He was Emir of Kufa. Appointed by Yazid. And Hussein would not have that. Hussein would not have that. Now, Al-Hur bin Yazid al-Hanzali, not related to Yazid ibn Muawiyah, Al-Hur bin Yazid says he's surprised. He's surprised. Why aren't these people letting Al-Hussein go? Why won't they let him pledge allegiance? No war broke out. And Hussein didn't do anything yet. Nothing happened yet. No rebellion has occurred yet. And Hussein hasn't raised a sword yet. And he wants to pledge allegiance to Yazid. Why don't you listen? Why don't you listen to him? And then he says to them, he says, if the Turk, if the Daylam, the northern Persians, if they requested of this, it is wajib upon you to accept. And he tried to negotiate with them, but they would not have it. So Al-Hur got on his horse and headed towards Al-Hussain and his army, and they thought that he was going to attack. So he turns around on his horse and he sends his salams, and he heads directly into the army of Umar bin Sa'd and kills 2 men before he himself is killed. And that's the first, casualty in the battle. Now what's very interesting is that in version A, what occurs is the most commonly, narrated version of events is that Al-Hussain said, I give you 3 choices, give me one of these 3 choices. I either go to Yazid, or I go back from where I came from, Medina, in this case, I guess. Not Mecca, I think it would be Medina. Or number 3 is, take me to one of the outer lands of the Muslims. Abu Mukhnaf also mentions another option. He says this, the 3 choices, this is the view of most of the narrators and most of the muhaddithin. However, there's this other version I've heard in which Al-Hussain says, let me go to wherever I want to go. Just let me go. So this is in version A. In version B, this stuff about Yazid and putting his hand in Yazid's hand, it's no longer there. It's taken out. Because of course it would suggest that Al-Hussain, could be accepting of Yazid's rule. Which is, of course, authentic according to Sunnis and Shi'is. Again, remember, this is the most authentic Shi'i version. The one that we don't accept, the one that we reject. This is the most authentic Shi'i version, according to Abbas al-Qummi, and according to Nur al-Tabrasi, and many others. What we do have is also in Tariq al-Tabari, the narration of Sa'd bin Ubaidah, who was in the army of Umar bin Sa'd. He says that there were some old men, some old Kufans that were crying, and they were saying, Ya Allah, help Al-Hussain. Ya Allah, just save Al-Hussain. And he said, how about you guys? How about you guys come down? How about you guys, do something about it? And he said, I saw Al-Hussain come, and I saw him speak to our leaders. I saw him try to negotiate with them. And when all else failed, one of the men, Umar al-Tuhawi, who was from Bani Tamim, he took out an arrow and he put it in his bow and he shot Al-Hussain in his back. And Hussein just simply returned back to his camp. Sa'd bin Ubaidah also narrates, he says, while we were on the water on our horses, this is of course in Al-Furat, on the river, while we were on our horses, Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas had Juwayriyah bin Badr al-Tamimi, I believe, was sent to him as a representative of Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. And he said to Umar bin Sa'd, you need to move and you need to attack Al-Hussain now. You need to kill Al-Hussain. If you don't kill Hussain, then I'm supposed to kill you and I'm supposed to replace you. Umar bin Sa'd gets on his horse and he says, okay, let's head into Al-Hussain's camp. And that's when the massacre occurred. And they killed, not everyone, but they killed most of the men that were there, basically. We do have some description of how Al-Hussain died. Years and years later, Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi, who is of course the emir of much of Iraq, the tyrant, yes. While he was approached by Sinan bin Anas al-Nakha'i, and he said to Sinan, "Are you the person who killed Al-Hussain?" And Sinan bin Anas said, "Yes." And he said to him, "How did you kill him?" And he said, "I rammed him with my spear, and I used my sword and I cut him into bits." And Al-Hajjaj, the tyrant, said to him, "You will not be in the same place that he will be in the hereafter." This is Al-Hajjaj saying. Yes, that's the irony. That's the irony. Subhanallah. And of course, this is something, of course, very important to keep in mind. According to this, and according to Ahl Sunnah, the killer of Al-Hussain is Sinan bin Anas. According to this, it's Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan. You ask, not, I'm not saying 99% of Shias, 99.9, even most of Ahl Sunnah, they'll tell you Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan. However, according to Ahl Sunnah, and according to the earliest narration, it's Sinan bin Anas.
So who introduced Shimr into the conversation?
Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan took part in the battle, and Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan pushed the army of Umar bin Sa'd to attack Al-Hussain. However, he's not the killer. He's not the specific killer. In any case, Al-Hussain basically had his head cut off, and his head was presented to Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. And Ubaydullah bin Ziyad used to take a stick and used to, prod his head. And he said something like, "Oh, Al-Hussain, you have truly grown old." And Anas bin Malik, who was there, said he was very... Anas bin Malik, the servant of Rasulullah said, he was the most close looking to Rasulullah. Subhanallah. Now, one of the most interesting things, Tabarani, in Mu'jam Tabarani al-Kabir, he says that Abdul Malik bin Umair said that I walked into the court of Ubaydullah bin Ziyad and I saw the head of Al-Hussain. And not too long after, I walked into the court of Al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi and I saw the head of Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. And then I remember walking into the court of Mus'ab bin Zubair and I saw the head of Al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. And then I walked into the court of Abdul Malik bin Marwan and I saw the head of Mus'ab bin Zubair. And the killing just continued. And subhanallah. And that's one of the calamities, that when someone, of course, as we always hear, when a prophet is killed, or when, a son of a prophet is killed, the calamities will just keep on happening to the peoples. Subhanallah.
So how is Yazid directly related to
Okay.
How did Yazid react to the whole...
That's a very good question. Did Yazid have any direct hand in the killing of Al-Hussain? We will never know. The most clear thing that we do know is that Yazid did not do anything to Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. He did not take him out of his position. He did not punish him, and he just left him in his position. He saw that what Ubaydullah bin Ziyad did was perhaps a good strategy for the kingdom, and that was it.
What was, is there any clear narration about what was Hussein's intention when he went to...
Okay, so the brother asked about Hussein's intentions for going to Kufa. Again, Hussein's intentions, what we find very clear is that Hussein did not want to stay in Mecca because he did not want to get killed. If there wasn't that danger, if there was no danger for Hussein being killed, I don't believe he would have left Al-Madinah. I don't believe he would have left Mecca. I think he would have just stayed where he was.
So he didn't go for the power, just the people's bayah.
Again, he says to Ibn Abbas, I don't want to be killed here. I don't want to be the person. I don't want to be the person that causes the haram to become halal.
So does the haram become halal to someone else? Because Rasulullah said something.
They turn it into halal, because it is the land of haram. It's a land of impermissibility.
So
and
when did it happen?
it happens at the time of Ibn Zubair. So, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.